Crespi. I'm a partner and the CEO of a company that's called ISM Virtual Worlds. It's a very small Italian company that specializes in virtual worlds management and creation. We actually come from the more commercial side of virtual worlds, and we don't have much experience with the real live simulations that you talked about before. We're more on the very virtual online side of things. So what I'm going to talk about in this presentation is really what we learned and studied on commercial virtual worlds platforms that you can use through web, or you can install locally on a server. So what we do at ISM Virtual Worlds is really we spend a lot of time investigating and researching on new technologies. Of course, the ones that can be easily applied and used for companies and to produce commercial products. We work with some institutions, but our main focus is on companies. So here, for the introduction of the speech, I basically analyzed a little bit of history and what brought us to what virtual worlds are today. In 1962, believe it or not, we had the first, what we call a first experiment called Sensorama, where basically they used all the senses to basically try and give a user an experience while watching a movie. So it was the first attempt to use the smell, to use the touch. You had the wind simulating the touching of the surface, all accompanying a movie going on inside this box. We have, yes, this is the picture of the drawing. Actually, it's the original patents drawing. In 1968, Evan Sutherland created the first headset display, and then you can see how the technology was at the time. Of course, a lot of things have been done after that, but this was the first attempt at Harvard University. Then we had, we go ahead a little bit, and we had Maze Wars, which you can see, here in this funny looking computer. Maze Wars was the first thing that really looked like a 3D interactive simulation, and it was a multi-users, and users could connect through ARPANET, which was even before the internet was there. So as you can see, we have very early attempts to work on these technologies. And then we go further in 1978 with MUD1, which is the first, MUD is multi-user dungeons, as we call it in the field. And it was basically a simulation based on text, where you could actually find instances and situations, problems to solve, and you would have to take an action or choose a response via text and options. So no graphics involved. There we go with Words Away, 1985, was done by CompuServe. It's an American internet service provider of the very early stages. They created this, it's actually all 2D, there's no 3D involved in it, but it's the first attempt to work with avatars and so on. From that, after that, let's say the first considered to be, in our field, from what we know, virtual world is in 1987, the Habitat by Lucasfilms. This was, again, a very primitive case of a 2D simulation that attempted to take people and immerse people. And here you can see two avatars chatting. And the last that I wanted to mention in this presentation is in 1996, Virtual Helsinki, which is this one, which was, let's say, the first complete attempt to simulate a whole city, recreating, as you can see, the city of Helsinki in Finland. Okay, after that, I'm gonna run and talk straight away about Second Life, because I think Second Life marked an important step in virtual worlds development. Why am I saying this? Because for some of the reasons that Wayne was mentioning before, and also because the media talked about Second Life a lot. So virtual worlds technologies, commercial virtual worlds technologies, were brought to the general public by the media between the years of, let's say, starting from 2005 until 2009. The media coverage due to the Second Life phenomena was very high. So a lot of people became to know what was going on and learned about virtual worlds. Second Life was launched in 2003. Of course, a lot happened ever since. And since that time, let's say in the years 2000, the last 10, 12 years, we saw a lot of different virtual worlds developing, a lot of successful initiatives, especially in the kids and teens sector. Again, we're talking about commercial virtual worlds here. Some of them died, like the Google first attempt to make a virtual world. There is even a Chinese virtual world that is called EP High that began after Second Life. So, but today, for this presentation purpose, we'll only analyze a limited number of worlds. They are the ones that we use mostly at ISN when we come to the need of creating a company custom space for training and learning purposes, which are currently the main use that virtual worlds are used for. So when now we go more a little bit into the best practices. When we talk about virtual worlds, we generally start by thinking of them in two ways. First one is the territory-based virtual world, like Second Life, for example. What I mean is a world that has got a surface, a map, and where the territory constantly expands and can be seen as an expanding territory, very much like in real life. As much as people put more content, add places. In this type of virtual world, the territory is generally made by sectors or islands that are joined together. They can be seen between, but generally have a developing surface. What I call sector-based virtual worlds is something else. Is a virtual world where I don't actually see a geographical surface, but I know that there are places. I can add a room, I can add an environment, but I don't actually see it as a continuation of a surface, of a geographical surface. So here I'm just mentioning the main platforms that I will be talking about and that we use currently at ISN Virtual Worlds. Again, we are not platform developers, we are solution providers. We use the best solution that fits the client's needs. I may have not mentioned all the solutions that are there. I have not actually, but I only mentioned the ones we have some knowledge of and that we apply and adapt to business uses. So we have, of course, Olive, which was from Portera before, now it's Sari, which is a very customizable application, a platform to do virtual worlds. It's very powerful and controllable. Also very expensive too. We have DSL Grid, which is the engine behind Second Life. We call it DSL Grid. Not many people know that when Second Life was launched, the idea was to launch a demo to show people what could be done with the new type of technology, which was DSL Grid, which was thought to be more of, in a way, it was thought to be an operating system done in 3D. The first case of an operating system done in 3D. Then we have Blue Mars. Blue Mars is a fairly recent platform. It's based on a very different architecture from Second Life, for example. And as opposed to Second Life, where to have more people doing activities you have to expand the territory. In this case, you can have thousands of people staying in one single place. So there is no need to actually expand the virtual territory to have more people fitting in. Then we have Entropia, which is very similar to Blue Mars and Second Life in a way. All these platforms, the first one that I mentioned, have a standalone viewer. This means that you have to either download, in case you go through web, or install locally a special viewer to enter the world. Now, commercially and for private companies, this can be very much a drawback, because you may not want users to go through a download process, especially when you have to download large files. The Second Life viewers, for example, is a 30 megabytes file, which is not too big for nowadays bandwidth. But if you talk about Blue Mars, you go up to a download file that can be 1 gigabyte. Why? Because some of these words and viewer softwares, some of them install part of the 3D models and animations locally, but not all of them. Second Life doesn't. Second Life is all on hosted web servers, and you basically download in real time what happens. It's similar to streaming. In Blue Mars actually optimizes streaming technology, and whereas there is a part of the content that is installed locally, a lot of the content can be streamed with a technology similar to movie streaming, and you can also go on iPads and iPhones very easily. They're actually developing and enhancing the iPhone application in Blue Mars at the moment. Then we have the browser-based solutions, which currently are some of my favorites. Why? Because, of course, accessibility is a solved problem in that case. Everyone has got a web browser, so as long as I can make things run smoothly from within the browser window, then I'm happy. So we have Google O3D, but we have especially Unity, which is a platform that I particularly like, that is really powerful, flexible, and adaptable, and can be very easily integrated with other ICT applications, which is one of the problems, and we will analyze that later on in the first section of this presentation. I mentioned also Reaction Grid Jive. Jive is a product by Reaction Grid that is based on Unity, so it's actually an extension of Unity, especially built for training and collaboration purposes. The ones that have a ready module to go mobile nowadays, from the ones we work with, are Blue Mars, Jive, and Unity. There may be other platforms with this capability, but we have not studied them or implemented them yet. So this is mainly, these are mainly the ones that we use and we work with. So we saw the technologies a little bit. We're going to talk into more details about the technologies when we get to the best practice section of this presentation. But the first question is, okay, we have a technology, how is the market responding to it? And is the market ready for it? Which is a tricky question, actually. If we had to give a snapshot of digital media nowadays, using Rogers' curve of innovation, I personally believe virtual worlds are the red dot, as you can see, and in this particular development stage. I think they are about to go mainstream and to be adopted largely by companies primarily. I think we are living now the moment where there is very little interest from the media, as opposed to the peak of media's attention we lived in 2007, 2008. I'm sure Bruno remembers all the media coverage that we received on the Second Life project and so on. And it was a magic moment. Anything you would do inside of Second Life would just explode. But now it's not like this anymore. Now institutions, individuals, and companies are looking for real added value and real content in virtual world. They want to know if they are an answer and a possibility to do certain things in a better way. The critical factors when implementing a virtual worlds project I mentioned 4 of them. Bandwidth, of course, the first one, is vital. All these systems, as you can imagine, and as most of you know, use a lot of bandwidth. So forget it if you don't have the right bandwidth coverage. Obviously, this is not a problem if you use a LAN version of a platform. If you install it in your LAN, no problem. Also, you don't have so many security issues that we will see later on. But if you want something to work on web, you have to be very careful about bandwidth penetration. Usability is another key factor. They have to be very, very, very easy to use. We're talking about interfaces here. A lot of people that just dropped out of Second Life, for example, at the very beginning, they did because they found it difficult to use. And we'll try to understand later on the type of users of these technologies and where we're at now with the psychology of users. Again, Wayne analyzed some of these aspects in his presentations when we saw the kids totally immersed playing video games. Okay, so we'll talk about that as well in a little bit. Scalability is another very important factor because we need to be able to start small but think big. We may want to start testing a 10 people environment where you can have 10 people collaborating in a room, but we want to go up to 10,000 users. How do you do that? What is the process to go from a test project to go to a mass market project for thousands of users? And at last but not least, the system integration, which is, of course, vital, especially if you are thinking of a large organization which is very structured and has got an ICT, a complex ICT infrastructure. There are methodologies to respect best practice. There are things like ITIL, for example, in IT service management that sets rules that need to be respected in order to even enter the IT department of a company. So integration is vital. This is a slide I wanted to include. I'm going to go quickly over it. It basically analyzes why we should be interested in 3D technology. But again, Wayne explained that very well. There are more things you can do with one more dimension. Of course, you can imagine all of them. You can do interaction. You can do synchronous interaction, real time. You can share content synchronously. One thing is watching a presentation, being a green dot on a computer, knowing that there are other green dots. Another thing is simulating to be sitting one next to the other and actually seeing an image of this happening and moving around yourself. So immersion, as Wayne was saying, is vital and is the key to get better results from the users that enter a virtual world. If you are highly immersed, you will highly participate into something, you will learn better, you'll be engaged into what you're doing. So your attention level will be much higher. If I can draw a comparison, for example, between a classic webinar where you just see the slides and possibly the video of a person talking and a virtual world meeting or conference, the level of engagement is like double. Okay? But it has to be easy to use and you don't have to encounter the problems due to the critical factors that I mentioned before. So, here, as Wayne was saying, we have here a new generation of learners that are now perhaps beginning to work to enter the business world. These new learners are very different from the previous generation. They grew up immersed in technologies, they play video games. The learning process they know better is a video game tutorial, how this is done, is trial and error, is learning by doing something. So this type of learner will very likely get very bored and very little engaged if you give him a book to read or a standard presentation. Whereas he will give you some great feedback and results if you immerse him into an interactive environment that is very much like a video game. That's why we call them, in fact, serious games, the training simulations. So think about a new type of learner that is used to be totally immersed in technology and in the internet, who is used to create an alter ego, to have an avatar, or even create his own virtual space in online communities. So if we have a new generation of learners, we need a new generation of learning solutions, of course. And so immersive 3D collaboration solutions are the answer. So what we need to bring to our users a cutting-edge training solution is basically taking some of the elements that are present in a video game, the 3D part, the environment, the sound, the physics, and put it together with some collaboration tools that really work. So from discussion, chat, voice over IP, preset meeting rooms, preset environments to use for simulations and training. What we try to do is basically not only make a nice 3D environment to use, but bring in a set of tools that generally come from collaboration and training as we know from e-learning or other online 2D collaboration tools. Because we believe the real power is merging the two. There is no point of making you read a page of text in 3D. I'd rather have a 2D window open when I click in the 3D environment, which opens a Word file. It's of course better and more easy for me to read. So let's talk about a bit about the best practices here. I'll try to go quickly because you're doing time, I think. So 10 more. 5 more minutes. Okay. So we work mainly on 4 things to create a good experience. Experience design, interaction design, interface design, and integration planning. So I'm going to run quickly. Design around the user. Always remember, when designing a user experience, imagine and plan exactly what the experience will be for the user. So learn a lot from communities. For example, we study a lot communities and how people behave to design good experiences. Make it an experience. Use emotional values of users so that they can be more immersed and more reactive and get better results. Give them feel-good tasks and use leveling. This means if you have a user that you have to give something to do, a level to complete, a training simulation to complete, make different steps and levels and make it easy for them to advance, to be engaged without finding too many difficulties, but on the other hand also stimulating them, not making too easy things. So use leveling and be dynamic, and adopt a participation pyramid where you know before that you're going to have different types of users with different levels of engagement. Again, I'm going quickly on these. Here we have again a user motivation matrix, which basically analyzes all the motivation drivers that play a role in online collaboration and communities. And interaction design is very important. So plan and design how users will interact with each other, with the objects, with the learning objects, and with any service that goes around in the virtual world. Draw a full interaction map and draw an animation map. List all these things and map them before you actually start working. The interface design is also a vital part of our job. Make it look good. So if a user works with a nice interface, you'll be happy to use it. It has to be idiot-proof. Make it very easy to use. It has to be fast. And it has to, and you have to design how the application will integrate with other IT systems. Again, here there's a little bit more on integration. As I was saying before, ICT infrastructure, security, web services, and mobility are the key elements to consider when you integrate a 3D simulation into a company IT infrastructure. So here we have from now on, okay, I wanted to show you some case studies of projects that we did. I think we have a couple more minutes, so just videos. So currently we have 3 ongoing projects. One is a risk simulation in construction yards. All of them are projects that are co-financed by the European Community, by the way, and they're all in the field of research and training. So virtual construction yards is, here we should have the video starting. Maybe there is no player installed in this computer. We try and make them start from here. Okay. Yes. Okay. So since the videos were not working, this is actually another one. I start with this one. It's virtual agriculture simulation. Can you turn the volume down a little bit? Okay. This is a space used to train agricultural entrepreneurs. So they're not real workers in the farm, but people who own a farm and need to model and their farm and learn the best practices to manage the farm according to the European Community standards. We use these spaces to do free training, meetings online in those premises, and we use this space to produce short animation videos to train people on how to do things in a farm. So here is the typical farm. You go from the hosting facilities where you have a hotel and restaurant and how to manage those supplies and so on, until the fields and the cultivations where you will learn how to manage, how to grow stuff and how to produce things the right way. And if I could show a last thing, one last very quickly. Okay, we have some. I'll show you. This is a video we've done for Nestlé, doing a presentation on 3D technologies for simulation and training that shows some of the training spaces that we have and that we use, going from simple 3D collaboration environments where people meet up and do meetings as opposed to web meetings in 2D, to real training and simulation spaces that range from learning on risk training to doing practical simulations of any activity. So since the other videos was not working before, I'm going to show you that. That is a little bit of an overview of all the types of spaces that we use. Okay, so I leave you to that. Thank you so much. I used all the time, so if you have any questions, thank you.